Hi, everybody. Welcome again to another episode of the ShopNotes Podcast. This is episode number 182. I'm your host, Phil. Logan and I are on the show today, and we're going to talk about fixing up old tools, working in your shop in the winter, and finding out what your gluing comfort zone is. The podcast is brought to you by ShopNotes magazine, oddly enough. And it's a digital 4 times a year magazine dedicated to people who enjoy spending time in their shop as much as we do. So you want to check it out at shopnotes.com. 4 issues for $20. And we've completed our first year back, and we have a special book that collects every issue into one single printed volume. You can find that as well, shopnotes.com. All right, I want to get going by a couple of comments that I got. A few episodes ago, late last year, I was talking about spending time in my shop, getting my drill press in better shape.
Yeah, situated.
I made a bit rack for it and didn't really do like a full tear down, but spent some time on the motor and the pulleys and got a return spring for it because I didn't have one, blah, blah, blah. In fact, and it works delightfully now. It's much quieter, much more stable. And I wrote about it in the editor's letter from Woodsmith, and I got a couple of comments, which shocked me because I didn't think anybody really read those.
I know. I'm always like, you guys wasted your time reading that when I put one in Bob Wood.
Yeah.
Like, huh.
Yeah. So, and I would like to, because you know that feeling where you're like, I'm spending a lot of time writing this, and I don't know how many people actually read it. So
I know.
Got a couple of comments. I want to read those that I think are related to it. This one from Richard Piper. He says, I go in streaks regarding shop maintenance. I have a Delta Unisaw that has served me quite well for the last 24 years. Other than occasionally blowing the dust from the trunnions and waxing the top every few years, I have done nothing, and its performance is spot on. I replaced the straight knives on a 733 DeWalt planer with a spiral helical head, whose performance has been nothing short of miraculous since. Now I have a jointer project. I was given a 1971 Powermatic 8-inch jointer. It was cutting okay, but needed tweaking. The outfeed table was frozen. I ordered a new spiral cutter head, changed out what I believed to be the original V-belts, and took apart the outfeed bed. I'm waiting for a new cutter head and suspect that when installed, the jointer will be better than new. It has been a fun journey. Which I think you would probably agree with that, Logan, considering your recent Delta jointer.
Yeah. Like, they're not always set up exactly right from the factory, and especially if you buy it secondhand, you never know what the monkey before you did, so you might as well start swinging from that tree yourself.
Right. And I feel like even if they were set up from the factory within the ballpark, you don't know what happened in between factory and retailer and original owner.
There's a long time in a shipping container.
Yeah.
And if you've ever seen some of those shipping container like freighters, like in the ocean, like the amount they swing and stuff getting rattled around, like, yeah, they're supposed to be packaged nicely. They probably aren't. I mean, They said something about like they lose, I don't remember, like 2,000 or 3,000 containers into the ocean every year.
Yeah.
Like, So, like, I mean, yeah, you never know. I mean, and even if it lands stateside and it's fine, no damage or anything, there's a lot of moving that has to happen from the port to your shop.
Yeah.
So stuff can get bumped. It can get, a hard bump in the pickup truck on the way home could knock a table out of alignment from the blade a little bit. Like, you never know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, I think we upgraded one of our Delta jointers here with a spiral cutter head, and they're just amazing, amazing tools.
Yeah.
And, the Rikon one that we have, and now the Grizzly jointer planers with a spiral cutter head. I think probably the biggest thing is how much it eases stock preparation.
Yeah.
Because, in the past you're like, which way do I feed this across? Because I don't want it to just tear the crap out of the grain.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like, it doesn't matter.
Really matter. Yeah.
You just kind of just pick up the next one and fling it through.
Yeah. I also feel like, and maybe this is just, I don't know. Maybe I'm not. I don't know. I feel like it's also easier on the user using a helical head. Like, I feel like it cuts cleaner. I feel like it cuts easier. Like, I don't feel like I'm like applying the amount of force to the workpiece to get it through a helical head like I do a straight knife.
I would agree with that.
Like, it just feels like it feeds a lot easier. I feel less worn out after a day of, prepping stock than I do on a straight knife.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I mean, you're feeding it against the rotation of the cutter head. And sometimes it just feels like you're pushing it up a hill.
Yeah. Well,
with straight knives.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, kind of the reason why industry went away from square cutter heads, which used to be the standard. So back in the, 18 to 19, early 1900s, square cutters were easier to manufacture. They were generally 2 or 4 knife cutters. Most of them were 2 knife cutter square heads. And the biggest problem with those, actually, I have a friend in Des Moines that I'm trying to sell he has a Fane Egan 12-inch jointer that I'm trying to sell for him. And the comment I keep getting is it's a square knife cutter head, and they're known to kick back. They're known to, because technically you only have 2 cutters, and with the square geometry, you can actually feed that board fast enough that you catch it in between the corner of the cutter head and the table and not a blade. So with that in mind, I feel like there's a little more, chomping action that happens with straight knives, because it's like, cut, no cut, cut, no cut, cut, no cut. And that's, that's why they can maintain speed and draw less amps than a spiral cutter head, where the spiral cutter heads just take a lot of little nibbles. It's just doing this thing.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I just always feel like it's easier on me if I'm using a helical head.
Right. No, that's fair. I mean, I remember that with some of the router bits my dad had when I was a kid learning to use a router, where they were more wing shaped. They didn't have the bigger solid body, which was like the anti-kickback or whatever design. Mm-hmm. And it just felt like those bits wanted to just kind of chomp. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So another comment here. Oh, where did that little one go? Come on now. Here it is. James writes, wanted to comment on from the editor Sawdust. I can relate to keeping my tools in top running condition. The month of January is my machine and hand tool maintenance time. I clean and lubricate all of the elevation screws and guide rods on all my machines, clean the tables and apply a coating that protects them from rust and helps the material glide across the table. I also take the time to sharpen all of my hand plane irons, 8 of them, and my chisels to a razor sharp edge. Nothing more aggravating than reaching for a hand tool and find it is dull or nicked. I enjoy Woodsmith very much. Keep up the good work. I've been a subscriber for many years. I will try and pronounce James' last name, but that would be an insult to him. So I will just let it go as James W. from Utah. You know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no, January is a good time for that. When you get some shop time and spend some time doing that. So, and then one last comment from last week's podcast. We were talking about like what to do with like little tiny pieces. We were talking about material storage. DP Meyer writes, for small valuable wood, ebony, holly, or knob size wood, etc., I have a special drawer for them, and also use some of the clear plastic gallon containers, like the ones that Oots pretzels or Target cheese balls come in. The nice thing is I can see what's in the clear container at a glance.
Yep.
which is a good idea because a lot of those things are little tiny pieces. And if you can't see them, they don't exist.
Bingo. That's why I hate drawers in cabinets. I mean, I like to put stuff away and not see it, but then it's like, well, I don't ever use it if it's in a drawer or a cabinet. So it's a weird paradox.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And you have like two prime examples over your shoulders right there is
bingo.
That tool cabinet and the sawtill, where saws are all visible.
Yep.
But it does contribute to, does that contribute to visual clutter for you? Because I know you're not really.
Yes, it does. Okay. Yeah. I mean, now, let me put it this way. That half is perfect because those are all nice, fancy, like new saws.
Sure.
That half is like, those all need work. So that is visual clutter. The right half, when you're looking at it, the back saws, I'm like, oh, those are beautiful. Nicely made, boutique saws, you know. The other side, apart from my one from Charlie, most of them need work. So they're clutter and they're anxiety driving things. It's like, hey, you should fix those. Hey, you should clean those up. Hey, you should sharpen those. Like every time I look at them.
Right. Because it's like, hey, look back there. There are 6 projects you haven't finished yet.
I know. So yeah, it's funny. I thought about something right before we started podcasting, you asked, Mark wandered through and you asked Mark about saw blade sharpening.
Right.
Because we did a shop cleanup there.
Yep.
We got some meetings happening next week, so nothing like company coming over to clean your room. And we had a pile of saw blades. Okay. This is one of those, like, do as we say, not as we do. Like, send your blades out to be sharpened. At least your nice ones. Now, I will say, not all of our blades were nice ones.
No, that's true. We had a bunch of
like Diablo. I mean, and they're fine blades. Yeah.
Utility blades.
Yeah. But I would be interested to hear from our readers, like how many people send them out to be sharpened? Because I know there are certain things that if you have it professionally sharpened, it's better than new. Okay. Chainsaw chains. That's a great example. I buy a brand new chainsaw chain out of the box. It will cut well.
Yeah.
If I file it with my filing gauge, it will cut so much better.
Oh, okay.
And the first thing, if you see a professional logger and they put a new chain on, first thing they do is file it. So I will tell you, I have never had a blade sharpened. Okay. I will attribute that to 2 reasons. One, I'm pretty diligent about switching blades between a rip blade and I don't have a true crosscut blade, but I have a combo blade.
Okay. So
I'm pretty diligent about doing that. I don't cut wet wood or green wood or sappy, sticky wood. So my cutting, the amount that each blade cuts is half of like somebody that just leaves a combo blade in. Okay. So I don't really go through blades. And this is the funny thing. I'm going to grab it quick because I know that Popwood got one of these. Woodsmith got one. We put the Woodsmith one out on a free table, and then the shop guys started looking for it. And this was one of those things. I'm like, this is sometimes tool manufacturers
feels like a gimmick.
Yeah, sometimes tool manufacturers make a tool looking for a problem. Okay, and this is the Micro Jig Blade Clean. Okay, I'm like, okay, that's silly. We've had plenty of tools or plenty of tips come across our desk on, hey, use a 5-gallon bucket lid to soak your blades or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, you can make it work. That stupid thing just works really nicely. And I think I told you that the other day. And you said something about Mark was looking for the one that we had in the shop that we had given away to somebody. I don't know.
Yeah.
I actually don't know who ended up taking that because I already had the one for Pop Wood.
Yeah, and that was after the shop guys because I had offered it to Mark and Steve,
they're like, no.
And they like, no, that's dumb. It's a gimmick.
And then they ordered one.
Right.
So, and I will say, so I actually went through the other day. I was out here I think it was probably the day I was all pissed off after I couldn't get anything to start because it was -20 out and none of the diesel equipment would start and the shop was frozen. But I was out here and just cooling off before I went inside. I was like, I'm gonna clean my I have a Forest Woodworker 2 combo blade. That's kind of my cross cutting blade. And I knew the teeth were a little gummed up from all this alder.
Right.
So I was like, I'm gonna whip this thing out and clean the blade with it. It works so well. Like, I'm like, this is so stupid. Because, like, I mean, yeah, you could just spray a blade down with, like, simple green. Let it soak for a few minutes and then scrub it with a brass brush.
Yep.
That's fine. This thing has a magnetic handle on it. Okay. And when you open up the container, inside there is a giant wheel of like Scotchbrite.
Yes.
So what you do is you put a little cleaner in there, enough that if you push on the Scotchbrite, you can see the cleaner come through. You don't like fill it up to soak it. Like you just put enough in there to dampen everything. And then you hold your blade with this magnetic handle, push it down, and you spin it. And then you do the other side and you spin it. And you spin it opposite the rotation of the teeth so they don't grab the Scotchbrite. And my God, it works super well. It doesn't clean down into the gullets, but that doesn't really matter. The gullets don't really matter. The gullets are just there to remove sawdust.
Right.
So as long as the edges of the teeth are the things that will cause burning.
Yes.
If a blade is dull.
Yeah.
Or if a blade's gummed up.
Yeah. It's all the goop that collects like right behind the cutting edge. Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? I don't know what that thing runs, like $30, something like that. My only issue with it is it's just a little big. So now I gotta find, like, it would be cool if it was like a nano size where it would just fit a 10-inch blade.
Yeah,
that would be cool. Because right now that thing's probably 18 inches across. It's bigger than my truck steering wheel. But man,
I mean, the nice thing about that though, compared to the other ones, is if you do want to get in there and floss between all the teeth, you can get in there with a brass brush, and it's deep enough that it's going to collect all that overspray. Because when you do the 5-gallon bucket thing or the pizza tray, like we've used around here,
you're splattering.
It's splattering everywhere.
Yeah.
And that contains it.
And and inside the lid, there's this little foam holder for router bits. So you can stick your router bits in the lid and soak your router bits and do the same thing to router bits.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, it is well thought out. But I would be interested to hear if anybody has had their blades sent out to be professionally sharpened, where you have sent them. I know Forest will do blades, or they used to pre-COVID. I don't know if they still do. I would expect that they do.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting to hear what your experiences were. We had,
and what the cost is on that.
Yeah, because like if it's $45 to $50 to have a blade sharpened, it's not worth sending like a Diablo combo blade to be sharpened, but if you have a nice Forest that's, $150, then it's probably worth it.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested to hear what people think.
Yeah.
I do know when I was looking for carbide tipped bandsaw blades for this big crescent, Laguna, I think it was Laguna. They have the Resaw King carbide tipped blades. They said that their carbide tipped bandsaw blades could be resharpened up to 4 times.
Whoa. And
I think they offer it. Or maybe it was Woodmiser. Somebody offered it. I think most bandsaw blades, people aren't going to bother with sharpening.
No, I don't think so. I've seen Fine Woodworking in one of their issues. Was it at Tools and Shops a couple years ago? A guy had a jig with a Dremel.
Yeah,
that would index it, and it looked pretty cool. And it's one of those things where it's like, I'm just cheap enough to try that just to see what it's like.
Yeah.
I I use wood slicer blades on my bandsaw. That's pretty much the only blade I keep on there. And I mean, we've all hit the knot or the weird nail or whatever, and it's like,
yep, yeah. And I have strongly considered doing that on the sawmill, especially when I get down to like no blades. Although my buddy Bobby has bought a sharpener now, so we just run over there, and him and I will stand there for 2 hours sharpen, a box of 10 blades and call it good. But getting down to like that last blade, I'm like, boy, I've seen guys just grab a standard grinding stone and sit there and just zip, 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 and just spit. You leave it on the saw and you just sit there and go, because really you're only hitting the gullet and the inside face of the tooth. And like a true sharpener, like Bob's sharpener that we use on the bandsaw blades for the mills, those will remove material from the inside face of the tooth, so the inside, the hook, the gullet, and the top of the next tooth. So it basically is a full grind. And the reason for that on the sawmill is that you get hairline fractures inside the gullet. So if you don't sharpen, quote, sharpen or remove some material from the gullet, those cracks can continue, and that will lead to a broken blade.
Yeah.
I don't think that's probably the case with a bandsaw in our shop.
Probably not.
I mean, maybe, but I mean, most of the time they're either not worth sharpening because they're so inexpensive, or the teeth are so fine. It's like, how are you going to sharpen that? Rather than, I mean, sitting there with a chainsaw file and just, zzz, zzz, which, I mean, I guess you could do.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw, this was an Instagram post. I think he's in Houston. Kellogg is a woodworker. He has a big, humongous bandsaw, and he had a Dremel, and he was just doing it freehand and just basically going through and touching it up. And it was mostly to, let's just say, to remove the wear bevel from the teeth. Yeah. And touching it up. I don't think he would even call it a full sharpen. And he says he can do that maybe twice on a blade just to get it back into shape. And
I could see that, especially with like, I don't know how to do it like on a little 14-inch. I mean, you probably could, but I could see doing that like on my big crescent. Like if I had a 3/4 teeth per inch or something like that, where it's a pretty aggressive resaw blade. I mean, that blade's almost 20 foot long, so it would take a while still, but you at that point only have 200 some teeth to sharpen, and with a Dremel you can go pretty quick, I would think. And you don't really have to worry about angles, because those teeth are ground square and then they're set, so there's no rake or fleam angles or any of that stuff. So you don't have to worry about that. Where with a saw blade you do. I have seen, and I don't know how well this works, I have seen where people will set up like our diamond credit card stones that we sell on their table saw, like with a table saw jig, to sharpen their table saw blade, hone the face of the tooth with that. I'd prefer to send it to somebody that knows what they're doing. Right. Especially if it's like my nice forest blade or a nice, ridge carbide blade or something like that.
Yeah. No, that's what I feel like this is where the contrarian kicks in on me, and I blame my mother. But, it used to be in the pre-carbide to saw blade days, like there was a guy on every block who had some kind of Foley machine that would sharpen table saw blades. Yeah. And it was an easy side hustle, cottage industry to kind of get into. Whereas now with carbide teeth, there is a lot more of a complex geometry going on on each of those little carbide teeth. And most places where you have them sharpened, they're done on a CNC machine.
Yep.
And
with diamond type stones.
Yeah. And it's a vending machine sized unit that I can't imagine what it costs. But there's upkeep on it and training to make sure it's done right and blah, blah, blah. Totally get it. But it just is one of those industrialization of some process that people used to know how to do.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I would love here's what I would like to know from our listeners is, have you sent them out for sharpening? Where do you do that? Is there someplace local, or are you sending it back to the manufacturer? How expensive was it? And what was the experience? Like, what's the turnaround time on that? Because if you're sending it out to a manufacturer, whoever it is, I mean, that means you're either not woodworking in that time, or you have several blades that you're choosing from. So then there's that kind of cost. And I know that there's a lot of our listeners who are of the thrifty persuasion that just like getting by on what they can get by on. So where does that go? Because I also know that there are those same woodworkers that will scoff at the micro jig blade cleaner thing, because it's something that you can just as easily do with whatever your solution is. And if you have another solution, I want to know about it. Put that in the comment section or send us an email. Yeah. Bring it on.
So here is Forest still does it.
Okay.
It looks like the cost for a Forest blade, a diameter through 12 inches. Okay. A 32 to 40 TPI or the tooth blade is $27, which isn't bad.
No.
They give you, they have, straight and bent plates, add teeth, all those little add-ons, you can have them fix teeth that are missing, replace a tip is $8, replace 2 tips is $6 each, replacing 3 is $4.75 each, yada, yada.
Yeah.
But then they also have their shipping cost, 10-inch diameter and under. The first blade's $15, second blade's $3. So I think if you're going to do it right, and this makes more sense for somebody like us or a cabinet shop, it's like, hey, get a pile of blades, and then you send like 8 in at once.
Yeah.
And then you get 8 fresh, clean pairs of undies back,
Yeah.
So.
No. Yeah, because I know that the Des Moines area, it's not a big town, but it's not small either. And there used to be probably 3 or 4 places that did sharpening, including a branch of a kind of a national blade and bit distributor, wholesaler, whatever, that had a place in town. And I don't know, there's maybe 1 place in town now that does it.
Yeah, I don't know.
And even then, I don't know.
Yeah. I know that Acme used to do it.
Yeah.
Acme Tool. They don't anymore. The other one that I had used at the print shop a lot was KSW Corporation. They're over.
I think that's the one that the one I was thinking of, because I would sometimes see their trucks driving around to some of the different cabinet shops and whatever.
And they're more of like an industrial type blade maker and sharpener. Right. But I don't know if they do carbide. I used to send our big guillotine knives to them to sharpen. Those were carbide, so they'd have to.
Yeah. Because they would, at least on the side of their truck, they had offered, even router bit sharpening. So.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. And they would do I know that they would do a lot of, it was called KSW. It was Keo Saw Works is what it was. It started as. They were on KOA. They're not on Keo anymore. But they do a lot of like butchery saws. So a lot of, meat saws and stuff like that, which is kind of interesting, grinding knives for, like a meat grinder, industrial meat grinders, stuff like that. So,
yeah. All right, there you go. That's what we want to know. Then that would be a side question too, is what about router bits? I think most people just recycle those. But
yeah. Or you just keep burning your wood with them.
Yeah.
It's like, I already have that profile. It just needs a lot of sanding when it's done. Which is one thing I hate doing. I refuse to sand routed profiles. I hate that.
Yeah.
I hate it. So.
No, it's not good. And we won't even get into drill bits.
No.
All right. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
So now that you have your sawtill done, do you have another pop wood project that you're going to be working on?
Yep, I'm going to be working on 2 different ones simultaneously.
All right.
I think. Well, I'll probably pound out one first because I think it's going to be pretty quick. Famous last words.
Right.
I'm going to do the next issue. I'm going to do like 3 quick shop storage projects. So just kind of like little like shop storage things, like a push block holder for the jointer, maybe like a clamp rack designed to hold like 2 layers of clamps, maybe parallel clamps and bar clamps or something like that, F-style clamps and bar clamps. And then I'm trying to figure out what the third one's going to be. We were talking about like a little like shop type valet, kind of like a shelf that you can put around your shop for tools or pencils and tape measures and rulers and stuff like that. I also thought I got a nice set of Brad Point bits. I don't know where they're at. I got a nice set of Brad Point bits for Christmas. The fish brand brand from Sweden. And they didn't come in a case. So I was like looking on Amazon, like, can I buy? I mean, I could buy a drill bit index on Amazon, but I was thinking, I could do a quick little drill bit index, little shop made wood one, something like that. So that is one project. I also really need to start on a miter saw station for in here.
Oh yeah.
There's kind of things in here that I'm wanting to build out. Miter saw station, we always show miter saw stations, and a lot of people have ripped off our miter saw stations and sell them. But we've always shown like kind of the roll around, fold out type miter saw stations that people can, have in a garage shop and push out of the way. And those are cool, but there is a portion of people that have bigger shops that are fully set up and don't get tore down. So I'm going to do a, cabinet base style miter saw station.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna base it on the one that we have in our magazine shop there where Phil is, but that one's pretty complex for what it is. It uses frame and panel type construction, which I actually don't mind that, and I might do that. I might do the frame and panel type construction rather than like a sheet good type construction. So we'll see. But that one I will be starting here fairly soon. I don't think that's going to be a huge article because it's going to be like, hey, here's the frame and panel cabinet style, easy to make. And I'm actually, crucify me, everybody. I'm going to use the domino to do it, I think. All right. So I'm going to show dominoes. I mean, you could easily dowel it, whatever. So I think it's going to be, hey, here's how you build one of the base cabinets. And then here's an option for doors and shelves. Here's an option for drawers. And here's how I'm building a flat countertop that's going to hold my miter saw. And I also have a company that I had a call with a couple of weeks ago called Red House Tools. They are making these really nice miter saw wings. So I told them they wanted to get their wings into the magazine. I was like, well, if you send us that, we'll get them in the new tools section, as long as they're quality, which they appear to be. They've had really good response at the shows they've gone to. They actually were on Wood Magazine's Innovation Awards this year.
Okay.
But I also told them that I was getting ready to build this miter saw station, and I'd love to kind of include them in that plan style because they're an interesting concept for wings. I really like the Biesmeyer style miter saw wings. We have those in the shop. I really like those.
Those are super cool.
They're very nice, but nobody makes that style anymore. Woodpeckers, I think, has a similar one. Initially, a year ago, when I was kind of planning the shop and planning on a miter saw station, I was thinking, okay, maybe for the miter saw station, I'll go down the path of like using some, extruded aluminum tubing and, like the 80/40 channel, stuff like that.
But you can.
You absolutely could.
Yeah.
I think for accessibility for people and not to make it super expensive to put together. I mean, don't get me wrong. The miter saw outfeed wings they're pretty pricey, and I'll probably show an option to, build some out of plywood, but
yeah. No, I think what's interesting is you have a tool like a miter saw where there are very different philosophies on how you use it, even though it's the same tool. Yeah. And you have the people who, us included, will show a miter saw station, and it's essentially a cart. It's a portable thing, because when you're done miter sawing, you fold up the wings and you basically try and find a place where this thing is out of your way. And then there's a miter saw is an important part of the construction process throughout, and you want that set up all the time, like you're saying, or like we have in our production shop.
Yeah.
And you can have it as let's just call it a big countertop with the saw on it, and then you could park a bunch of carts underneath it or make cabinet bases, and then that becomes your hardware store, or built it into a lumber rack or whatever. So yeah, I think that's a cool project.
Well, and I think fundamentally there are two opinions on the miter saw. We talked about this the other day. Like, there are two opinions on a miter saw. People that say you cannot get a finished cut off of a miter saw,
right?
And then there are the trim carpenters that say, "F you, buddy, I sure can." And I think that if you have a properly set up miter saw, you take the time to build a nice miter saw station, you have a good zero clearance insert on it, you have a nice blade on it, I think you can get as clean a cut off a miter saw as you can on a table saw.
Yes. I agree too.
Yeah. And I think in some cases it is easier to get a clean and square cut off a miter saw than it is on a table saw. And I say that thinking about something like a bed rail. Okay. Those are 85, 86 inches long.
Right.
Trying to cut that on a table saw, it's a pain in the butt, because even with a big sled, it's still sagging. You have to clamp it. Like, there's a lot of variables. There's a lot of forces fighting against you.
Yeah.
Where if you have a well-built miter saw station, or your miter saw is set up well and it's tuned up well and you have a good blade, a whole lot easier just to pull that blade down into the work than try to move the work across the blade.
Yeah.
So I also feel like if you have kids or young people in your shop, miter saw is a better way to crosscut than the table saw.
Okay. Why do you say that?
I say that because they are controlling the blade and not the part.
Okay.
So it's like, hey, if like in my high school shop, we were not allowed to crosscut on the table saw. We crosscut on the radial arm saw. That's where we crosscut.
Sure.
Because there was on the bed painted a red area. Hands don't go here. So it's like, as long as your hand's not in the red, you're fine.
Yeah.
Whereas with the table saw, I don't know. There's more that can happen. Rather than, I'm not talking about radial arm saw. I'm talking about a miter saw where it is a simple pull down, and that's all you're doing.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. No, I would agree too, and I think that I think it's interesting that people don't hesitate, within reason, to change out blades on their table saw, to go from cross-cutting to ripping to putting in a dado blade. But on a miter saw, and we're prime examples of it, is we put in a really nice blade, and then the first thing somebody does is we get a delivery from Liberty, and somebody just starts whacking up 12 quarter boards with an 80 tooth crosscut blade, and then we wonder why we don't get decent cuts. It's like, what are you using your miter saw for? Is it just a breakdown tool? Then don't spend a lot of money on a blade. You're just lopping boards to rough length, and you're going to finish them somewhere else. Totally
Bingo.
Cool. Do that. But don't spend 45 minutes to put in a new zero clearance insert and $100 on a really nice crosscut blade and nice stops and, making sure your fence is all aligned, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
If that's all you're going to do with, or if that's what you're going to do with it, learn how to change the blade in your miter saw quickly and go from the junky blade that's just cutting boards to the blade where you're
finished cut blade,
where you're making finished cuts, and acknowledge that.
Yeah. I also am not a fan of, and I have one. I'm not a fan of having a miter saw on one of those rolling, like fold up job site type stands.
Oh yeah.
I grew up with my dad having he has an, it's 30 years old now. It's a rigid miter saw. Sliding compound miter saw. He was so proud of that thing when he bought it, and now it's like, it's in the rain. He's so proud of that saw. And then when we were trimming a basement or something, he's like, I'm going to buy a nice blade for it. So he bought a nice blade. And now, like, I've borrowed that saw. Now I have my own, but like I had borrowed that saw. It's like, boy, that really nice blade he bought is now rusty because it's been used 1,000 different times. So I bought a saw that needs a new blade. I'm just not a fan of those rolling stands. Like, they're fine for the job site. Like, if you're framing, sure, no problem. If you're building a shed in your backyard, cool. They're not rigid enough for the type of work I want to do in my shop. So, and if they are for people, cool, great, awesome. That's awesome. But I have the space and I have the need and desire for a solid stand. So, yeah. No, I will not be including a dust collection hood around it because they still don't work. Stupid dust collection hoods. And miter saw dust collection is not good anyways. So.
Right. No, there's just no way to get the amount of airflow you need where you need it.
Nope.
And being able to accommodate mitering. If you're just doing straight up 90-degree cuts, I think you could do it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm sure somebody somewhere has a 3D printed shroud that magnets on, you know what I mean? Like, you could probably do it, but
yeah. Well, I'm thinking, Frank Howarth on YouTube he is very dedicated to his radial arm saws, and he's dedicated
to a lot of things.
Right. He's got a dust collection set up for the radial arm saw that I think is pretty sweet. And I always feel like there's got to be a way to adapt that for a miter saw, but allowing for mitering or bevel cuts, then I think that starts to fall down. But again, it depends on what you want to use your miter saw for.
Yeah. Allegedly, the Capex has the best dust collection out of any miter saw.
Okay.
So I don't know. I don't know what the Capex does different. But I still don't believe it. Don't believe it till I see it. Don't believe it till I can set my cup of coffee there and not have to spit out the first sip.
There you go.
So no, those are the two Popwood projects coming up. And then I still got like a lot of projects to do out here, like finish my office and stuff like that, finish trimming and stuff. But that's a problem. That's future self problems. I do need to come up with some solution for my outfeed table. I built my outfeed table for my basement shop. So the outfeed table ran the width of my wing, which is, I have a 36-inch fence on my saw.
Yeah.
So it was set up for that 36-inch width of the saw. I could walk all the way around it. It basically made it a big table saw island. Yeah. Now I have it set lengthwise, so I can kind of squeeze my big butt between the wall and the outfeed table.
Right.
And the problem is the top I built sagged really bad. And I did not expect this. And I don't know if it sagged as a... Yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, I know the answer. It's 2 layers of MDF glued and screwed together. Okay.
Uh-huh.
I put plastic laminate over the top, and then I edged it in pine. And it stayed pretty flat for a long time until I routed a bunch of match fit tracks in it. I routed a grid of match fit tracks for match fit clamps from Microjig. I essentially kerf bent this top by doing that.
Yeah.
Which I did not think about. And then I slid a board across there one day. I'm like, or I was trying to glue something up. I don't remember what I was trying to glue up. Oh, it was my Kumiko wall shelf. That's what it was. And I'm like, there is something crazy. And there's like a 1/4 inch of sag in the middle of this thing.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, dumbass, this needs to change. Like, I mean, I just did not think of it. I did not think it through when I did it. I like the system. I like the match fit clamp system. And I will probably incorporate that, but I do need to do an outfeed table. I'm going to do like a torsion box style outfeed table.
Okay.
Do the match fit track in the top still, because I still really like that. But I also think that I do want to change the size of it a little bit, which might mean taking an angle grinder to my Craig base that I have and cutting it down. Which, I mean, just because, you know, a manufacturer sells something at a particular size doesn't mean it doesn't have to stay that size, especially if you have a way to cut it. So I might end up chopping that down. So that is right behind the miter saw station, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. I think that wraps up another episode of the ShopNotes Podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or smart remarks, you can leave those in the comments section on our YouTube channel, where you can check all the other videos that we do. You can also send me an email, woodsmith@woodsmith.com. Once again, this podcast is brought to you by the people who support us by subscribing to ShopNotes magazine. You can get 4 digital issues a year for a great price. I think currently $20. And also check out our printed yearbook from 2023 of all the issues from that volume year as well. You can check that out at shopnotes.com. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.